I always believed my wedding day would be the happiest moment of my life. The moment everything finally made sense. I was standing just behind the chapel doors, bouquet trembling in my hands, when someone stepped in front of me. It was the photographer. Her voice was low, urgent, almost shaking. "Amelia, before you walk down that aisle, you need to see your groom's phone." She turned her camera screen toward me. And in that instant, my world didn't just crack, it collapsed. My vision blurred, my chest tightened, and I knew, with a certainty that made me dizzy, that my life was about to change before I ever said I do. If you want to know how this unfolds, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I read every single one. My name is Amelia Brooks. Ever since I was a little girl, I dreamed of a wedding filled with love, family, and honesty. I was raised by my mother, Helen, a woman made of quiet strength. My father left when I was young, so it was always just the two of us. She worked double shifts, skipped meals, and somehow still made sure I never felt unloved. So when I met Daniel Wright, I didn't just fall in love. I felt safe. Daniel was charming in a gentle way. He remembered the little things. He helped my mom fix her porch steps. He brought soup when I was sick. He spoke about our future like it was sacred. My best friend Maya used to laugh and say, "Curl, you hit the jackpot. The rest of us are still praying." The venue that day looked like a dream. Soft ivory roses, candlelight, music floating through the air like a promise. Every seat was filled with smiling faces. My mother stood beside me in the bridal suite, adjusting my veil with trembling fingers. "You deserve this happiness," she whispered. "He loves you. I can see it." And I believed her. The night before the wedding, Daniel had held my hands and said, "No matter what happens tomorrow, remember, you're mine forever." I cried myself to sleep, overwhelmed with joy. But there had been a moment that morning. As I crossed the courtyard earlier, I noticed Daniel standing with a woman I vaguely recognized. She was smiling at him, not politely, but intimately. When she noticed I was watching, she turned and walked away quickly. I told myself I was imagining things. Weddings make everyone emotional. Then Maya burst into the room. "Ready, Bri? Daniel looks like he might pass out from excitement." I laughed. Everything felt right again. The music outside shifted. The doors were about to open. That's when Claire, the photographer, stepped inside. She wasn't smiling. "Amelia, please, look at this." She turned her camera toward me. The photo showed Daniel in a quiet hallway behind the venue, his forehead pressed against another woman's. Her hand rested on his chest. The intimacy was unmistakable. This wasn't comfort. This was familiarity. My knees nearly gave out. "Who is she?" I whispered. Claire hesitated. "Her name is Lena Foster. She's connected to Daniel's family. I saw him pull her aside." I recognized the name. Lena was a close friend of Daniel's sister Rachel, always around, always distant with me. Suddenly, everything made sense. Then Claire said, "There's more." She played the video. Daniel's voice was clear. "This doesn't change anything between us." Lena replied softly, "Then promise it won't last." The video ended. The dress felt too heavy. The room spun. My mother looked at the screen, her expression hardening. "She knew something was wrong," she said quietly. Maya clenched her fists. "Say the word, I'll expose him." But I needed the truth from him. I texted Daniel, "Come to the bridal suite. Alone. Now."
Minutes later, there was a knock. He stood there, smiling nervously, unaware that his life was about to unravel. "What's going on? Everyone's waiting." I blocked the doorway. "I saw the photo. I saw the video," I said calmly. "You have 10 seconds to tell me the truth." His face drained of color. "It's not what it looks like," he started. "Do you love her?" Silence. That silence was louder than any confession. "You will not marry me today," I said quietly. "You will not use me." His mask dropped. "Be realistic. Do you know how much money is invested in this? Think about appearances." That's when I knew. This wedding was never about love. It was a transaction. Then Rachel stepped into the room, tears in her eyes. "She deserves to know," she said. "He's done this before. He promised Lena he'd leave you after the wedding, after securing certain financial agreements." The truth hit like a wave. I adjusted my veil, not as a bride, but as armor, and I walked toward the ceremony doors. When they opened, the room fell silent. Daniel stood at the altar, smiling, until he saw my face. I stopped halfway down the aisle. "Before this ceremony continues, I need to speak." Gasps rippled through the crowd. This marriage was built on lies. Minutes before this ceremony, the man I was meant to marry was promising another woman that marrying me wouldn't change their relationship. Daniel tried to stop me. "Amelia, please." Rachel stood. "Stop lying." Lena broke down in tears. I took a deep breath. "This wedding is canceled," I said. "I choose truth over comfort, dignity over deception." And something incredible happened. People stood, not in judgment, but in respect. I walked away from the altar not as a woman abandoned, but as a woman who chose herself. Later, my mother held me and whispered, "You didn't lose a husband today. You saved your life." Weeks passed, then months. The story spread, but I wasn't the victim. I was the woman who walked away. I rebuilt my life slowly. I moved home. I healed. I rediscovered who I was before I shrank myself for someone else. Claire later told me she started a foundation inspired by that day, supporting women in creative truth-telling. And I learned something powerful. Sometimes life doesn't fall apart to destroy you. Sometimes it falls apart to set you free. If this story moved you, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. You're not alone, and your truth matters. The moment I stepped out of the ceremony hall, the air felt different, lighter, as if the world itself had exhaled with me. But freedom doesn't arrive quietly. It comes wrapped in aftermath. Outside, the late afternoon sun hit my face, warm and blinding. I stood on the stone steps of the venue, still wearing my wedding gown, guests murmuring behind me, the echo of what I had just done rippling outward. My hands were shaking, not from regret, but from adrenaline. Maya squeezed my fingers. "You were fearless in there," she whispered. I didn't feel fearless. I felt awake. Inside the venue, chaos erupted. Some guests argued, others comforted Daniel's stunned parents. Lena had disappeared, escorted out a side door in tears. Daniel stayed behind, pacing like a trapped animal, furious that the carefully curated image he had built had collapsed in front of everyone. I didn't look back. That night, I didn't go to a hotel or a honeymoon suite. I went home with my mother. She made tea like she did when I was a child. Too much sugar, hands steady,
eyes watchful. We sat at the kitchen table in silence until she finally said, "I'm proud of you." That was when I broke down. I cried not for the wedding, but for the future I had almost trapped myself in, for the woman I might have become if I had stayed silent. The next morning, my phone exploded. Messages, calls, voicemails, some from guests, some from distant relatives, some from people I barely knew, but most were from Daniel. At first, his messages were apologetic. "I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. We can fix this." When I didn't respond, the tone shifted. "You embarrassed me. You destroyed everything. You could have handled this privately." That's when I blocked him. A few days later, the truth unraveled even further. Rachel came to see me alone. She looked exhausted, older somehow. "He's done this for years. Women, lies, emotional manipulation. I protected him because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't." She handed me a folder. Inside were copies of emails and documents, proof that Daniel had pushed for the wedding to secure business connections tied to my late father's estate. The betrayal wasn't emotional alone. It was strategic, calculated. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt calm, because clarity is quieter than pain. Weeks passed. The wedding story spread beyond our town. Some people twisted it, others praised it. I learned quickly that you cannot control narratives, but you can control your truth. I stayed offline. Instead, I started rebuilding. I returned to journaling, long walks at sunrise, therapy sessions that peeled back years of conditioning that taught me to tolerate less than I deserved. Maya moved in temporarily, filling the house with laughter and burnt dinners. Slowly, joy returned. Not loud, but real. Then one afternoon, I received an email. It was from a woman named Sophia. She wrote, "I was engaged to Daniel 5 years ago. I left quietly. When I heard what you did, I cried. You did what I couldn't. Thank you." More emails followed. Different names, same patterns. I realized something then. Walking away didn't just save me. It exposed him. Months later, I stood in front of a small audience at a local women's center, invited to speak about emotional manipulation and self-trust. My hands trembled as I stepped onto the stage, but when I looked out, I saw women who understood. I told them, love that requires silence is not love, and choosing yourself is not selfish, it's survival. That night, as I drove home, I smiled for the first time without effort. I wasn't someone's fiancé anymore. I wasn't a bride. I was something far stronger. I was a woman who trusted herself and lived. I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. 3 months after the wedding that never happened, my life had settled into a quiet rhythm. Mornings started with long walks and coffee on the porch. Evenings were filled with journaling, planning the small event business Maya and I had launched, celebrations of healing, new beginnings, and personal victories. I was finally at peace. That's when Daniel showed up. I saw his car parked across the street from my mother's house just as I was locking the door one afternoon. My stomach dropped, not in fear, but in irritation. He was leaning against the hood, dressed casually, like he was trying to look harmless, familiar, calculated. "You shouldn't be here," I said flatly. "I just want to talk," he replied, his voice softer than I remembered. "I've been in therapy. I've changed." I laughed, not loudly, but honestly. "Therapy doesn't erase patterns," I said, "and change doesn't announce itself." He stepped closer. "You ruined everything for me," he said, "but I still love you." There it was, the contradiction he lived by. "Love doesn't lie," I answered, "and it doesn't need an audience to behave." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a ring box. The same ring. "I never stopped believing we were meant to be," he said. "We can start over, quietly." My chest tightened, not from longing,
but from clarity. "You didn't come here for me," I said. "You came because you lost control of the story." His expression hardened. "You think you're some kind of hero now?" he snapped. "People talk about you like you're brave. You humiliated me." I looked at him, really looked at him. The charm was gone. The mask cracked. "Leave. If you come back again, I'll call the police." For the first time, he looked unsure. He left without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I missed him, but because I finally understood something terrifying and freeing at the same time. I had never been special to him. I had been useful. 2 weeks later, the consequences arrived. Daniel's business partner reached out to me, not with accusations, but with an apology. The documents Rachel had shared were now part of a legal investigation. Contracts were being audited. Investors were pulling out. The man who once controlled every room was losing everything quietly. Then came the message that shook me most. It was from Lena. She wrote, "I didn't know the truth until after the wedding. He promised me lies about you, too. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied with one sentence. "We were both deceived. I wish you healing." And I meant it. The final chapter came unexpectedly. One evening, I was invited to speak at a regional conference for women entrepreneurs. As I stood backstage adjusting my microphone, I felt a calm confidence I barely recognized. I wasn't defined by what happened to me anymore. I was defined by what I chose afterward. When I stepped onto the stage, the applause felt surreal. I began with the truth. I was once a bride who thought love meant endurance. I was wrong. Love means honesty, even when it costs you everything. After the event, a young woman approached me, eyes shining with tears. "I was going to marry someone who keeps secrets," she said. "After hearing you, I postponed the wedding." In that moment, I understood. My story wasn't about Daniel. It never was. It was about becoming the woman who listens to her intuition and refuses to ignore it. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a final message from an unknown number. It was Daniel. "I lost everything." I stared at the words. Then I deleted the message without replying. Some chapters don't need closure. They need distance. I turned off my phone, poured a cup of tea, and stepped outside. The night air was cool, peaceful. For the first time, I wasn't looking back. I was moving forward.
I didn't fall in love again the way movies promise. There was no lightning strike, no dramatic moment. Instead, something far better happened. Peace arrived first. Months passed. The noise around my canceled wedding faded, replaced by something quieter but stronger. Purpose. The event planning business Maya and I started began to grow. Women reached out to us to plan ceremonies that weren't about marriages, but about milestones. Divorces finalized, sobriety anniversaries, first apartments, survival. We weren't just planning events. We were witnessing rebirths. One afternoon, while setting up for a small outdoor gathering, I met Ethan. He wasn't a guest. He was the venue manager, quiet, observant, steady. He helped me carry tables without being asked and didn't try to impress anyone. When a string of lights malfunctioned, he fixed it without making it a performance. "Thanks," I said. He smiled. "You looked like you had enough going on already." That was it. No charm, no pressure. Just kindness. Over the next few weeks, our paths crossed often. Coffee conversations turned into long walks. Long walks turned into shared silences that felt safe, not awkward. He never asked about my past. He waited until I offered it. When I finally told him everything, the wedding, the betrayal, the public collapse, he didn't interrupt. He didn't flinch. He just said, "I'm glad you chose yourself." That was the moment I realized something had changed. Not him, me. I no longer mistook intensity for intimacy. I no longer confused attention with devotion. And when Ethan eventually asked if I wanted to have dinner, not as a promise, not as a plan, but as an option, I said yes, slowly, on my terms. Meanwhile, Daniel's shadow disappeared completely. Legal proceedings concluded quietly. His name faded from conversations, from headlines, from my thoughts. One evening, my mother watched me getting ready for dinner and smiled. "You look different," she said. "I feel different," I replied. "You're not chasing love anymore," she said softly. "You're allowing it." She was right. The greatest gift I gave myself wasn't walking away from a wedding. It was learning that love doesn't require sacrifice of self. It requires presence, trust, choice. I didn't know where things with Ethan would go, and for the first time in my life, I didn't need to, because my happiness was no longer waiting at the end of someone else's promise. It was already here. And if there's one thing my story has taught me, it's this. Sometimes the life that falls apart was never meant to be yours. The real one begins when you stop forcing what was never true.